My favorite lines ever when he just says, perv.
Perv.
You had me at perv.
I wore a sling for what seemed like 6 months. Where is that? Can I have that, you guys? Where did
We
that
should have
go?
framed that sling.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm EW staff writer Chancellor Agard, and this is Around the Table with the stars and producers of Lucifer. Joining us today are Tom Ellis and Lauren German and showrunners Ildy, Modrovich, and Joe Henderson. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Thank you. Hi.
What's up?
Let's just start with what you were doing before the event this evening.
I was bribing a motorcycle cop.
You were bribing a police officer.
Indeed, not for the first time.
And up until recently, you consulted for the LAPD. And you also claim that you're the devil.
Was the devil. God now.
Well,
Nearly.
and how old would you say you are again?
But when time works very differently in hell, so...
He's just sensitive about his age. I mean, even I don't know the real number.
Thank you all for being here on sort of the right before the final season premieres. But before we talk about the final season, I do want to take a look back at the show's really sort of remarkable journey from when it first started to where we are now. And so I want to jump all the way back to the beginning and sort of start with Joe and Ildy. I mean, I know Tom Capano sort of wrote this pilot script. What attracted you guys to sort of coming on board and sort of show running this show?
Ildy, why don't you start? You were on first.
Oh gosh. I read it and immediately thought this is something special. I mean, I came in a couple weeks before the pilot shot and did some rewrites and things. And it was, I don't know, it speaks to the character of Lucifer and the relationship that was already there between Lucifer and Chloe. It was the heart of the whole thing. And it just speaks to you, from the very beginning.
For me, I was angry when I heard the show existed because I was a fan of the comic. And I was like, how dare they take Neil Gaiman's and Mike Carey's Lucifer and have him in a police procedural. So I was a lot of the fans who I think reacted. So I was like, this is absurd. There's no way this could work. And then I watched the finished pilot and I was like, I love this. I need this. Like, I want to work on this show and live in this world as much as possible. Like, it came to life. Like, I was literally the person who did not want to like it. And then I fell in love with it.
Do you remember the point in the pilot that sort of changed your heart?
I mean, the opening, it was the tone, the vibe, the way that Lucifer was exactly the character I had seen in the comics, and yet completely different, completely Tom. Like, it was both a love letter to the comics, but also it was a love letter by being its own thing. They're going, we're stepping away from this. We're never going to contradict that character or world, but we're going to be its own thing. And I think Tom made it its own thing.
Personally, it had me at perv. I don't know if you remember that moment in the pilot. One of my favorite lines ever when he just says, perv.
Perv.
You had me at perv.
That's a headline.
Bloody hell. What do you want from me? I've been watching you, Lucifer. Perv?
And Lauren and Tom, I would like for you guys too. I mean, what attracted you to the show about sort of the devil and a detective teaming up to solve crimes?
Well, I always tell the story of in the pilot, Chloe has like a dream sequence. You think it's happening, but she has a dream sequence where she grabs these guys who are making fun of her by the balls and shoves them up against a wall. And I read that and I was like, I have to read for this. It didn't make the pilot, and the pilot is amazing. But I just remember reading it and then thinking it was really interesting to see the devil played by this really charming British amazing guy and make the devil something completely that contradicts what most people believe about him. He can be almost human in a way, and loving and caring, and I just loved that idea.
And I think, I'm similar to like Ildy in terms of like my initial reaction to the script. I'd been given a few sort of scripts to read through during pilot season, and this head and shoulders above the others in terms of like how different it was, how different the character seemed to be. And I think for me, I'd learned over the last previous years before that if something was going to have any degree of success or longevity, on a TV show, that it needed to have a kind of central character that was interesting and fun and captivating and all those things. So that, I was like at page 3 or 4 where I was like, oh, I love this character. This character's great. And then, as that blossomed and the relationship blossomed with Chloe's character through the pilot, and the fact that you set it up as the devil, somebody who only thinks about themselves, is only interested in themselves. And then you realize that actually there's this little nugget in the pilot of learning that this character is actually has feelings for somebody else, or is able to think about someone else or care about somebody else. Just a little kind of like, an inkling of like daylight to suggest that there's more under the skin than this kind of perceived playboy. And I don't know, it was just so different to everything else that was out there at the time. And it was funny. That was the thing that really drew me to it. I just laughed a lot when I was reading it. And I never want to work too far away from comedy. And this was like the perfect hybrid.
Lauren, I mean, you mentioned that sort of dream sequence that got cut. I'm curious for you. I mean, speaking more specifically about Chloe, though, I guess, was there something that you found that you immediately connected with in Chloe Decker when you read the pilot?
Yeah, I mean, I just really liked her from the get-go. I remember reading the pilot and, kind of really falling in love with the Lucifer character, but then reading into Chloe, I mean, I just have a lot of respect for her. A hardworking single mom, a first responder, a good person, a person trying to do her best, flawed, but trying her best, and there's something about Chloe that's very open and raw. I just feel like she just presents sort of like if someone can really wear their soul on their sleeve, their heart on their sleeve, there is something to Chloe that, I find really beautiful and kind of just, I don't know, Joe and Ildy could probably come up with a better word, but, just this very like vulnerable, real person who's just very real and can be overly sentimental and overly earnest, but there's something refreshing about that. I love those sort of people, like sort of the nerd who's just like raw and honest and loving. And there is a lot of Chloe to that. And I just fell in love with her. I love Chloe.
Tell me, detective, what do you desire more than anything else in this life?
This is it? This is your big trick? I guess when I was a little girl, I always wanted to be a cop like my daddy so that one day I could help people and be taken seriously when I say to shut up and get in the damn car.
You're not like a Jedi or something, are you?
Get in the car.
And for Tom and Lauren, I'm curious, do you guys say that the show, a lot of it is built around just the sort of, at least from the viewer's perspective, like effortless chemistry the two of you have in the pilot? For you guys, do you guys recall sort of the first time you met and if that chemistry was there from the get-go, or do you have to sort of work to sort of develop that?
It was a lot of work.
I mean, you say effortless, geez. I mean,
effortless?
I was exhausted on day one, turning up, trying to manufacture some kind of chemistry with Lauren.
Ditto.
Ditto. Do you know, it was weird actually. Shall I tell the story, Loz? So basically
I'd do it, babe.
We met up. So we've got a mutual friend, basically, our dear friend Jesse Spencer, Spence. I'd gotten the part already, and he told me that Lauren was auditioning and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, the worlds kind of collided, and Lauren got the job. And so we met up the day of the read-through, just to sort of say hello to each other and read through the script together before we got to the read-through. And that was the first time that we met, and we made each other laugh a lot, and it just made sense reading it out loud, which was lovely. And then we took it to the read-through, and I mean, it was pretty easy and effortless to kind of to have that chemistry. And I think we've got a very shared sense of humor, wouldn't you suggest? Muff sacks.
Completely. I mean, you class it up a notch. I kind of down here, but yeah, Tom and I, we got on like a house on fire the first time we met, and we really never stopped laughing when you think about it.
We laughed our way through the past 6 years, basically.
Yeah, we did. We have a blast. Had a blast.
I think one of the things about this show that, at least, especially like when I was surprised when I started watching, was sort of how passionate the fan base is around Lucifer. And here's for you guys: at what point in the show's run did you guys realize the sort of fan response, or take note of how passionate they were for this show?
Well, when we got saved, by Netflix. I think that was the first time where I went, wait a minute, like, okay, we're all gonna go off to our next job. Oh, bye guys, it's been fun, and then hearing this online, what would you call it? This collection of people trying to save us. Yeah, I mean, Tom, you.
It was, I mean, same. It was weird. It was like, by about season 3, I'd done a little bit of like press stuff and going around and traveling, because it was obviously on Fox at the time, but then streamers around the world had started picking it up. And I'd started to get this sense that the show was actually quite popular, and like going to places and people sort of talking to me about it. I'm like, oh, this hasn't really happened to me much before. But it's true, it wasn't until it was cancelled that we all really got a sense of how popular it was and how many people were watching the show. That was both overwhelming and uplifting and all the other things. It was really incredible to find that out, because I did think if we got cancelled, there'd be a few people out there who weren't very happy. I just didn't quite realise how many. But yeah, it was a very vindicating moment.
And I mean, I think one of the cool things with the show is the fact that it has had this life on both a broadcast network platform and also on Netflix. Joe and Ildy, I mean, looking back at those first 3 seasons, what were some of the sort of challenges you guys sort of faced sort of making this show as a sort of a traditional broadcast network series?
Quite a few. Any new show has its bumps and things, but that first season, we hadn't aired and we were still filming, and we were getting cuts in to the network and the studio. And the main thing that we dealt with season 1 was more procedural, more cop stuff, less mythology. And we were like, no, that's the juice. That's the good bit, And we kind of clashed, to be honest. We clashed a bit with our producing team and stuff. And by about, I think the turning point was episode 8, Priest walks into a bar, because we had moments in that episode that were just character. They had nothing to do with the, story engine. And I can tell the story about when we fought for the piano scene, that people wanted to cut it. And we were like, because nothing was happening. And we were like, but there is something happening there. They're bonding. It's beautiful. It's, and not to, our team also agreed with us on many things, but that was one issue that we really kind of went head to head on. Joe, would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, the show is such a weird stew of procedural, drama, comedy, supernatural horror, and I'd probably missed 2 other genres. And I think the challenge of early goings was balance. And like Ildy said, like we were pushing for 2 things: character mythology, and that means both like the angelic, but also the relationships, the Lucifer, Chloe, all the dynamics between the characters, and humor and character. Like the cases are the engine by which we explore the characters, but the character development and the mythology development is what people stay for. It's what people fall in love with. It's what people ship. It's what we ship. Like Ildy and I, we always talk about, we're like the biggest fans of the show in like the most nerdy way possible. But it's true, because we love it. We love the show. We love watching it. And so we tried to create a show that it reflected what we wanted to see. And what we wanted to see was the characters moving forward and growing and stepping backwards and forwards. And that was the fight. And I think it worked out in our favor because it helped us find a balance.
Do you play?
No, I don't.
Come on, you must know something.
Oh, all right, well, let me see. I had 3 years of lessons, and this is all I remember.
Surely you must be joking. All right.
And I mean, for Tom and Lauren, I mean, looking back on those sort of, again, the first 3 seasons that were on Fox, what are some of the things that sort of come to mind when you look back then? I guess, where are the highlights or the things that first come to mind, I guess?
Well, I wore a sling for what seemed like 6 months, season 1. That was a highlight. Where is that? Can I have that, you guys? Where did
We
that
should have
go?
framed that sling.
Yeah. I miss Len Wiseman's 40 notes every 5 minutes. Len, if you're ever gonna see this, screw you and your notebook. Beat it, nerd. That one, Lauren, really. And there was more kind of deliberate procedure, which I respect both ways of doing it. But once we went to Netflix, there was a little more of a suave vibe to the procedure stuff that I really appreciated. It just was a little less.
Well, I think that's the point. It was a little less. It was like there was less, like, literally less volume of like episodes that we had to do. Because that's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
You know, as I'm sure Joe and Ildy will tell you, like trying to do 22 episodes and keep the engine going of the overall arcs of our characters. You know, it's that for me, and I'm sure for lots was like the biggest difference was the workload was like halved when we turned up to Netflix. It was still as intense when we were at work, but we weren't at work for as many months. And that also helped us kind of streamline and the story, and just it was very much more concentrated by the time we got to Netflix, I think. Sorry.
And you weren't standing in the pouring rain of Vancouver either.
Pretending you were in Los Angeles.
That's right. The Couve, the rainy Couve.
And the Couve was amazing. It's just when you have to pretend that it's a sunny Los Angeles day in February. Woo, my heart went out to you.
Just trucking around some fake palms, some palm trees.
Exactly.
Oh, I remember we had palm trees
That
out.
was our job on our show, was to literally have a truckload of palm trees and bring them to every set. And just over there.
Yeah, palm trees and bougainvillea. And I remember this one time, like the palm trees were covered in snow. We were like, somebody go shake the palm trees because there's snow on them.
It was the second show in a row that I'd done where I was driving, my character drove a convertible car with the roof always open. And it was filming in Vancouver, pretending to be Los Angeles. And I was the wettest driver of a convertible.
Tom, it's funny you bring that up. That's like, I remember when I first watched the pilot, that was like, Rush had premiered like a year earlier. And I was like, wait, he's driving convertible again.
He's still driving in Vancouver with his top down.
The big reveal in season 6 is that Rush was Lucifer and that it all ties together. So spoiler.
It's Rush's hell loop.
I know the first time I spoke to Joe and Ellie, I think it was back right after, I think it was right before the Netflix pickup or right after. And I'm asking you, what episodes would you recommend people go back and watch? Like the standouts. I think you guys picked the trilogy in season 2, which was Studios Interruptus, Love Handles, A Good Day to Die. I'm curious now, 3 years later, looking back at the show's 5 seasons plus, I guess, season 6 as well. What for you guys are sort of the highlight episodes for you guys that you think are the best ones you've done?
Don't make me choose my babies.
I know,
honestly,
it's Sophie's choice.
I would still hold those 3 up as a great trilogy. I think season 1, as we were discussing, is us finding a lot of our rhythm. Season 2 is, I feel like, when we just took off and didn't look back. And those 3 episodes in particular were very mythologically driven while still having very solid cases within them. And I love those 3 episodes because it's everyone rallying together for a greater good. Those are some of my favorites. There's some episodes in season 3 that are my favorites. It's funny. Someone literally just asked me, what should I watch to catch up? There's so many now that I was like, honestly, watch the pilot and then watch the recap and start on season 4. Cause there is that really awesome recap that Netflix did. I was like, but hopefully what you'll want to do is watch seasons 2 and 3 because we're really proud of them.
I feel like there are moments too that less about episodes and moments that were very pinnacle or pivotal in the relationships and the characters. Like in season 1, there is the moment in episode 8 when Lucifer's on the balcony railing against his dad and talking to his dad. And that was the first real emotional moment. We saw this hurt child, this angry child, and, with his father he felt abandoned him. Another moment in season 1, and yes, it's in my episode, but that's not why I like it. But the moment when Chloe sees Lucifer's scars, and that's a beautiful moment between the characters where it's all very glib until that 1 second. And so there's all these moments throughout all the seasons that they flash through my mind, and less about episodes and more about these beautiful moments between characters and stuff.
You cruel, manipulative bastard! Is this all part of your plan? It's all just a game to you, isn't it? Hey? Well, I know punishment, and he did not deserve that. He followed your stupid rules, and it still wasn't good enough. So what does it take to please you? Break your rules and you fall, follow them and you still lose? Doesn't matter whether you're a sinner. Doesn't matter whether you're a saint. Nobody can win, so what's the point? What's the bloody point?
And for all of you, I mean, I guess, is there, again, looking at the show's entire run, 6-year run or 6-season run, I guess, is there an episode or moment you guys wish you could revisit to shoot again, either because you loved it so much or you want to take another stab at it?
I know we've already talked about it, but A Priest Walks into a Bar was probably my favorite episode of Lucifer.
Just going to say that.
And and I think doing that piano duel, because it's so interesting you guys are talking about it and the fact we had to fight for it in the edit, but that to me was a real kind of huge moment in the show, and it really showed how different this show could be to what you expect it to be. And it was just a genuine moment, no words. And Coleman and I were just given a track of music to kind of like do something with. And it was an absolute blessing that Coleman Domingo came and guested on our show. And that's a moment I will always go back to and think, I don't think I've ever been more euphoric on a set of anything like doing that. And there's been moments since then where we've done musical numbers and stuff and it's been amazing. But that was remember it being like the first time I was like, wow, this is really special. And that was a really special moment. And it was just something I hadn't thought too much about before we actually did it. And then when it happened, it was quite magical.
Lauren, why were you going to pick that episode?
I've never laughed so hard. Honestly, I don't know if in my life, Tom can back me up on this. We had so much fun with Coleman, and he's so good. I mean, he's just so talented. So there's that, right? That's just the through line. None of this would have been as like great or funny if Coleman wasn't such a brilliant class act. But Tom Coleman and I laughed so hard shooting the church scenes of that episode. I remember I couldn't breathe. We were dying laughing. And it's just one of the best memories. It sounds so kind of benign, but I remember it was pouring rain outside. We had a long day in the couve shooting at this church. And at a certain point, we all just we were trying our best to be professional, but Coleman, Tom, and I just lost it to a point of like absolute bliss delirium. We were laughing so hard. And I don't know, it's just a great memory. I know. Do you remember we literally couldn't look at each other? No, we couldn't look at each other. I mean, I'm like about to start crying laughing right now. It was so funny. But then Coleman's so professional and good. I don't know. There's something magical about that episode. Oh, I just love that you guys were in the church. That's when he was dying and all the drama was happening. Always, it's usually always when the really heavy stuff is happening that you've got to kind of like fall apart at the side.
I remember those dailies. I remember watching those.
Did you see us laughing?
Oh yeah. I remember. Like I haven't remembered this for like 5 years, but I remember us watching those dailies during lunch and both being like, oh wow, they're going a little goofy, but also like, this feels good. Like you bring in a guest actor and you're like, oh, they're all getting along. Like, and it showed on the screen. Oh my God, Coleman. We've had some amazing, that's another thing that I loved about the show is we always had great guest stars. And these people would come in and they were so lovely and so talented. And like Graham McTavish, so talented, which comes in and nails every scene, just like Coleman. And then like the filthiest trucker humor when the cameras aren't rolling, which is my favorite. It's like, yay, there's another one around here. Not talented, just trucker humor. Yeah, I don't know. That's great. And then, I always remember the times where I got really scared or like laughed really hard. So Tom on the last season, are we allowed to say that with the wires out the avocado farm? Anyhow, I fly with him. Maybe cut this out. Do it. It's fine.
Anyhow, I fly. Well, I don't fly, but he's holding me. I was so terrified. And you could just see, it was like, higher than the highest roller coaster type view. Beautiful. But I was terrified.
I would be too.
Well, I guess same question for Joe and Ildy though. About is there something that you would love to revisit, just from a writing perspective, either because you had so much fun breaking the story with the writers, or something that you think you guys want to take another crack at to really nail down this time? Or
I would just like to be back in the season 1 room and feel that just strange chemistry of us finding this weird show, and revisit just that path that, you know, it was exhausting and at times incredibly frustrating and heartbreaking, but like it was also, you know, lightning in a bottle for us, because we were trying to make this show work, this show that shouldn't work, that the pilot worked, but how is this a show? Is this a thing that can actually exist for multiple seasons? And that process and that group of people, many of whom stayed on the show for years, if not the entirety of it, were very special.
I feel like we got to revisit things all that, like, because we had been canceled so many times, we actually did go through that, like, oh, since we have more, let's do this. Like, you know, if we hadn't gotten the 5th season, because we or the season 5B, so season 5 was supposed to be only 10 episodes or 8 episodes. I can't remember.
10.
And it ended up being 16, right? And if we hadn't gotten those 6 more episodes, we wouldn't have done the noir episode. We wouldn't have done the musical episode. Or actually, we were going to do the musical episode Come Hell or Freaking High Water. But we wouldn't have done a lot of the Dan episode. We wouldn't have done that. Dan Naked and Afraid, one of my favorites.
Oh, good.
And then also, if we hadn't gotten season 6, I think I would have looked back at the end of season 5 and felt like, oh, it needed more. Maybe we ended too abruptly, and we really got to just say a proper goodbye. Really, just that final chapter really made it satisfying to me. And I think it's going to make it satisfying to the fans.
None of us know exactly how it's going to end.
Relax, dude. He was like that when I found him.
Well, that's a good place to, before we wrap up, to talk a bit about the final season, to give the fans some teases for it. Along those notes, maybe for you, I guess, Tom and Lauren, how do you guys feel about this final season? How do you think the fans will react to it? And how do you guys react to it when you guys got to the end?
My gosh, I mean, I hope our fans feel the same. They're going to hate it. No, I mean, I really hope that we've done service to everything else we've done before it. And I feel that we have. I mean, it's such a difficult thing to kind of, you know, we did talk painstakingly about, like, how do we end this and what's the right way to end it and all of those things. And we all felt it was an interesting time, because everyone was so invested in these characters and in this show that we all really cared that we did this right. And I feel like we got to a place where we did that. And I just, I hope that, and I really strongly believe that our fans will think the same thing. I mean, ultimately, I know that our fans don't want the show to end, but they're going to have to suck that one up, unfortunately. But you know, if you're going to have to end something, what's the right? You know, I feel like we did ourselves proud in that department.
Tom said it perfectly. And something Ildy and I were talking about is that shooting this last season, and of course towards the end where we really are like, oh, we're on our last 4, or on our last 3, last 2, you're kind of saying goodbye to everybody as it's happening. Oh no, I want to start crying or something. So it was really cool to be on set, and you know, as you're winding down, you realize the enormity of it. It's just been such a beautiful long journey. And even though we were shooting, you know, we call it COVID style, which makes it, I mean, it's just with all our protocol, it was so hard because you can't really, you know, we were shooting COVID style. Yeah. And you can't really run up and be like, oh, I love you, and bear hugs and all that. But we did our best. You know, I'd hit someone with my 6-foot stick. Thank you for the past 6 years, you know. But it was this beautiful opportunity to kind of let it roll up on you, and you know, like, oh, this might be our last scene together, you know, with an actor as they're going out or whatever. It was just really cool. That was something I didn't anticipate shooting the last season. Just having this time to reflect and be grateful and look around and say thank you to people. That was really cool for me. And it just kind of dawned on me as it was happening.
And finally, I guess where do things, because I think last season ended with, Chloe dying, coming back to life, Lucifer becoming God. Where do things stand with their relationship in this final season? How solid are they? What's the status of that?
Well, I think they're pretty solid, which is great because you've seen so many ups and downs and ebbs and flows of doubt on either his part or Chloe's part, mostly Chloe. But, just all these ups and downs. And the last season feels more or less that they are on the same page and for the same greater good and for the same goal, even if it hurts one or the other. They really are. You see them as a team. And you see, even when Lucifer's feeling insecure, Chloe saying, I believe in you. I know you can do this. And there's some very beautiful selfless acts in the last season on both of their parts, where it's like heartbreaking, but for you, I will do this, for your greater good, for your happiness, for you, I will sacrifice, A, B, and C. So I would say it's the most kind of as a team that you've seen them on the same page, ready for the same thing. It's just, how do they get there? How can they get that going?
We've seen them be a team in many different guises through 5 seasons, but in season 6, you get to see them as a team in a way you've never seen them before. Right. And that's interesting.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us. I'm Chancellor Agar, and this has been Around the Table with Lucifer. The show's 6th and final season premieres September 10th on Netflix.